Welcome to the Omni Sports Podcast. Featuring your host, Bobby Labita.
I don't know about you, but it's feeling like week 22. Taylor, please don't copyright strike me. We're back for another week of NBA Omni Sports Podcast action. I'm your host, Bobby Labita, and this week I'm going to get you caught up on all of the week shenanigans. And shenanigans there was. So if you were walking down the street and you heard a pulsating message coming from some object that you couldn't quite understand, but you had to follow it. It compelled you to follow it. And so you walked down a dark alley and you found this object, and this object sent you on a coming of age story kind of sci-fi-esque quest, and you slayed the dragon. Well, if you've been preoccupied, don't worry, I got your back. But before we get into all of what happened this week, let's get into our sponsor this week, which is Busted Brackets. Now, if you're not playing March Madness, A, what are you doing? But B, you spend this whole year, or maybe one night, I don't know, I'm not trying to judge, picking these beautiful brackets, and then just Thursday morning comes around and bam, they're gone. You know, I got into 2 paid brackets. I got in a lot of brackets, and I picked one bracket. And you know what? I was like, I'm going to support my girlfriend. Her team is Kentucky. I'm going to make them go all the way. And they lost in the first round to the 14th seed Oakland. Everyone, this is what happens when you support your significant others. Your brackets get broken. Bobby is a dum-dum. Bobby is a dum-dum. Bobby is dumb. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Once again, I am here on my own podcast being shamed for my stupidity. And that stupidity is, once again, my ability to pronounce things. It's funny. I feel like my takes have been pretty good this year. It just, I can't freaking say the athletes. And it's a problem. Last week, I would say Shai, and then I would freak out and say Shy, but I was right the first time. This is why you should trust yourself. And then I would say the name wrong, and I would freak out about the middle name, and I said Gilgeous or something weird like that when it's Gilgeous. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, leader of the Thunder. And I'm sorry, Shai, because since I didn't know how to say your name last podcast, you've been slumping this week. You had a terrible game today. The Bucks just destroyed the Thunder, and I'd like to think in my egotistical brain it's my fault, right? Because I'm a dum-dum, and I don't know how to say people's names. But don't worry, I may not know how to say people's names, but I do know how to tell you about the news of the week.
Storylines of the week. 1.
I love talking basketball, by the way.
All right, guys, if you like that video, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching. We'll be back soon.
Oh, this first story, you know, it's not cool. I decide, you know what? I'm gonna start an NBA podcast, because what? Why not? Everyone else has a podcast. I could have one, right? And maybe 15 people will listen. It'll be a good time, right? But sometimes you make a product so good, right? So entertaining, so interesting to the masses that people feel threatened. And they think, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing. And that's what happened this week, y'all. LeBron James and JJ Redick are doing a podcast called Mind the Pod. Or Mind the Game, and I listened to the first episode, and it is excellent, and I encourage you all to do it. And I'm just just listen to it. It's educational. It's LeBron. It's JJ Redick, and the reason I have so many feelings is, you know what? I think LeBron felt threatened, right? He's like, Bobby's in the podcast game. All my boys in the podcast game. I'm gonna get in the podcast game, and LeBron just. You're already the best in one avenue. Just leave this to some other folks. You know what I'm saying? Just give me this. So please, y'all. I know LeBron started a podcast, but please, I'm begging you, don't stop listening to me. You can listen to both of us, right? There's a world where that exists. Okay, into actual basketball news.
It's just a little bump in the road over the last 7 or 8 games. Sends the ball missing. And Dallas with a long rebound. And they've got George backpedaling. And it's Kyrie with the alley-oop finish from Luka.
I tell you what.
We saw Kyrie dunk against San Antonio the other night, and he can fly. Kai can fly.
Luka set him up perfectly. In the open court, there's Luka with the loose ball. There you go, buddy.
The Dallas Mavericks this week against the Utah Jazz had a game with 18 slam dunks, which is the most slam dunks in a game this entire year. And what's wild is, everyone kind of jokes, especially with Luka, that everyone gets so 3 happy, but now Dallas, they're spacing the court, and then they have all this space in the paint, and they're just Lob City alley-oop. Kyrie's been getting in the alley-oop game, and he doesn't normally throw them down. He'll throw them up. And it's just been wild. And I check out the highlights of this game because there's some really cool dunks. You could tell the Mavs players were starting to get into it. And it was just Lob City Clippers again, but Lob City Mavs?
3.
Hey, neither of my schools even made it, so you win. Russell, there it is! Single season 3-point mark for the Lakers now belongs to D'Angelo Russell.
All right, it's fitting for number 3 that we have 3 3-point stories to talk about. So first you have Steph Curry, who hit 300 threes. Once again, this has happened 7 times ever in NBA history, and he is 5 of them. And he did it in a season that, the whole time everyone's like, he's getting older, but doesn't matter that he's older. He's still the best 3-point shooter of all time, and he was able to show it once again this year. I don't have high hopes for the Mavericks, for the Warriors, but I think the reason the Warriors are even in the place that they are in is that Steph has been able to do a good job. But our next 2 stories have to do with breaking records for threes for specific teams. So the first player we're going to talk about is D'Angelo Russell of the Los Angeles Lakers has broken Nick Van Exel's 3-point record, which happened in 1995, and Nick Van Exel had 183 threes. Now, this is almost 30 years ago, and it's crazy when you think about the 3-point revolution that no one has been able to beat Nick's scores. Part of that is, I think somewhat of the Lakers' philosophy, we had some big guys, early on, in the early 2000s. Kobe was more of a mid-range guy, and then we really sucked in the 2010s until LeBron came, and LeBron's, a great player, but he's not always been like that dynamic 3-point shooter, though he has a really good percentage this year. But D'Angelo, there were rumors that he would get traded, and since then, D'Angelo has been probably the 3rd best player on the Lakers behind AD and LeBron. He's been really important. He's been really necessary for the Lakers' success, and he's been popping off. So good for you, D'Lo. You were once a Laker, traded, come back as a Laker, and break the record. But D'Lo was not alone this week. Michael Porter Jr. for the Nuggets also set the 3-point record for the Nuggets this week and the most threes in a single season. And Michael Porter Jr. is just such a great compliment to Jokic and Aaron Gordon. He really helps kind of creates, again, space on the court, and Jokic is so good at finding the open man, and I think this has allowed Michael Porter Jr. to take it to that next level. And it always just feels like when you look up at Michael Porter Jr., he's doing the right thing. And the record that he broke has been around since 1997. So we've had 2 long-standing 3-point records break this week, which is really cool. So for storyline number 3, continue to shoot your threes. Last week, I talked about how Anthony Edwards, he may just have had the block of the year. And I'm back again to talk about Anthony Edwards, who may just have had the dunk of the year. He absolutely posterized John Collins, and the term posterize is used way too much when it comes to dunks. Anytime someone dunks on another NBA player, they're like, that's a poster, put it, blah, blah, blah. But this... oh no, Ant got way up there and he threw it down. And this was a good play because both Ant and John Collins, who was defending him, got hurt. Ant slamming it down, hits his hand on the rim and like is in clear pain. And John Collins ended up getting a head contusion because Anthony Edwards just slammed it down so hard. And I've seen people this week make some comparisons to Anthony Edwards with Michael Jordan, which I thought was crazy. But like the intensity and just what he's able to do and the athleticism, he's not MJ. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying pay attention because Anthony Edwards, I think, only has room to grow. And he just keeps making these athletic plays that just blow my mind that I'm like, I need to talk about this on the pod.
Oh, it's awkward. It's awkward. It's awkward.
We're back with more awkward moments. When I created this segment, I didn't think it would be that popular, but I think it's necessary because more awkward moments keep happening. So first, continue on from last week. There's just a lot of awkwardness around Grady Dick and his jersey swaps. People are asking him questions about it. He's trying to be tongue in cheek, like, oh, I've known Anthony Black for a long time. And now there's a list of other people he should do jersey swaps with. And I just want to say, if you pay attention to basketball, this will probably be, unfortunately, a story that doesn't die even in future years, just because his last name is Dick, which is, it's kind of funny, but like my last name's Labita, which sounds like libido. And Grady seems to have a lot of fun with his last name. I hate that my last name is anything remotely sexual, right? Like, I'm just like, oh, like, stop it. I get it. I've heard this joke before, but Grady, man, I'm glad that he's loving it. I'm glad that he's loving Dick, And then in our next awkward story, we have, so Boston Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla is seen as kind of a weird guy. Might be the diplomatic way to put it. He does some strange things. Competitor, passionate, fiery. But one thing he's been doing is, so it's typical when there's a stoppage in play and someone has the ball at the end of the court, very often they'll shoot the ball just to get some shooting practice. Why not? You have the ball at stoppage time. So Joe Mazzulla actually blocked, can't say this, he tried to block another player who did this during stoppage, and everyone's like, what are you doing? And so I guess the league told Joel Mazzulla to stop doing that, which is just so funny. Like, just imagine, this is what I read is like, Joe Mazzulla said that league wants him to stop blocking threes from other people. And it's just like, what is happening? Again, it feels like we're in this weird, Onion-esque universe where this is happening. But YouTube gods, whoever's there, this will be the first time in the NBA podcast history, or my NBA podcast, that I'm actually going to show the clip and not just the audio. So if you're watching, you'll be able to see this, but if you're just listening, because the audio won't do it justice, so here we go.
Now we are seeing that Clipper ball club that had played so well when Harden came on as a starter. Westbrook went to the bench. Out of the corner, it's Kawhi for three, no.
So the Clippers were up by 21 points. And Kawhi Leonard gets the ball in the corner so wide open. And he gets the ball and he goes to shoot a three. But as he looks up, who is closing out on him? James Harden, his teammate. And James doesn't really try to block it, but he's running over and Kawhi misses the wide open three. And And James Harden said after the game that he was just trying to lighten the mood because the Clippers were up by so much. They were starting to get into a fog, and he was hoping that it would, kind of snap him out of it. And to be fair, it worked. The Clippers finished the game. But this is one of the funniest and wildest plays I've ever seen, where a guy is intentionally trying to block his own player. Now, obviously, he doesn't really try to block it, but like the first time you watch it, you're like, did I see that right? Am I going crazy? And the answer is no. James Harden did try to do that. And you know what? I appreciate a guy who can find ways to have fun, and obviously didn't hurt the team. But Oh, especially on Kawhi, who like doesn't typically, we don't associate with having a sense of humor. It's just like extra. And honestly, this is my favorite clip of the year. It is so stupid, and I love everything about it.
News and notes.
He's awesome, and as we're getting ready to say goodbye, Craig.
We got another one. Another meeting between the Rockets and an opponent.
Those two got into it the last time saw Utah, and I'm sure Jabari had not forgotten, taking exception.
This one is broken up much quicker than the one the other night against the Bulls. But again, for those of you who are keeping track at home, the Rockets are undefeated in games this season in which they've been involved in some altercations, shall we say.
All right, in this section of news and notes, I'm going to tell you about one quick story, and then we're going to get into sort of standings and how trends are working for different teams. So the first bit of news is that Houston's Jabari Smith Jr. Is being suspended for 1 game, and Utah's Chris Dunn is being suspended 2 games for an altercation that they had in a game. Jabari didn't really do much, so I guess I'm a little surprised by that, but Chris Dunn, it makes sense. It's also the kind of time of the year where it's just kind of like, okay, let's just stop this. Stop the shenanigans. And then looking at the standings, we're going to look at just how teams are doing. This is sort of a little recap. This is probably the most like basketball focused part of the podcast, and I do apologize that this week is a bit shorter. There's just less interesting stories that happen that weren't just like kind of silly. There were less sorts of things like that. So kind of getting into it. Before I get into it, here is a crazy statistic though to kind of whet your appetites. Is that right now the Lakers are 39-32 on the season. And right now they are the 9th seed. Last year at this time on this date, the Lakers would have been the 4th seed if they were 39-32. And it just goes to show that last year was kind of the weirder year. Usually the West will have like a lot of teams that do well, that have high winnage, but like it's crazy how different it is. And there's a realistic chance that a team this year can win 50 games in the West and not make the playoffs. Part of that's because of the way the new play-in structure is, but that's just crazy. All right, we'll start in the East and then we'll go to the West as we typically do. I know that sometimes like going over these things, it might not change a lot week to week, but this is, I think, the best way to kind of just paint the picture of what's happening, especially as the weeks are starting to wind down. So in the East, not too much has changed. It's pretty similar. So you have in the 10th seed and you have the Hawks. In the 9th seed, you have Chicago, who both have losing records. Then you have solidly in the 8th seed, about 5 games up on the Bulls. You have the Sixers, and then you have Miami. These teams have all been mid the last 10 games. Atlanta and Chicago has been 5-5. Miami and Philadelphia has been 4-6. Then you have Indiana, who's 40-32. They're the 6th seed, and they're 6-4 in their last 10. Then you have the Orlando Magic, still holding strong, 7-3 in their last 10. Then you have the Knicks, who are 7-3. They're doing very well. They're keeping it together. And then you have the only team that's really struggling in this top 8. You have the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are 3-7 in their last 10. You have the Bucks, who've been looking a lot better. They're 6-4 in their last 10, and they are the 2nd seed. But a whole 11 games above Milwaukee, you have Boston, who's 9-1. And they're just, if Boston's not playing the Nuggets, as long as they're not playing the Nuggets, I think they'll be good. They're just such a well-oiled machine this year, and it's really again, as a Lakers fan, it's been frustrating all year to watch this because they're really good, and I can't not give them their flowers. Next, going to the West, which, as I talked about last week, I thought the West was super interesting because of how things are breaking down, and it's getting a little more spicy. So the Houston Rockets, who last week I was like, they're there. don't worry about them, but they're playing better. Well, Bobby, of a week ago, they're one game out of 10th from the Golden State Warriors. So the Rockets are 9-1 in their last 10. They're 35-35. And then you have the Warriors, who are 36-34, who are 4-6 or less. And the Warriors just, man, they look tired. They just don't look good. Vibes feel a little off. Then you have the Lakers, who are 3 games, 2.5 games above that, who are 6-4 in their last 10. The Lakers are just such a weird team because you never know if they're going to be good or bad. It always feels stressful. I can tell you that for sure. It just it feels like we're primed to always do bare minimum. I don't know how to describe it watching as a Lakers fan. Then you have the Mavericks, who are 7-3, who I mentioned. So this is what's wild. So you have like I said, the 7th seed, you have the Lakers, who are 39-32. And then you have this huge clump of teams. You have and I'm just going to go give you how many wins they have. So Dallas is the 6th seed, has 41. The 5th seed of the the 8th seed of Dallas has 41. The 7th seed of Sacramento has 41 wins. The 6th seed has 42 wins. And then the 4th and 5th seed have 44 wins. So you only have 3 wins separating 4th through 8th, which I think is really crazy. That's really tight. And especially now with the play-in, it's not just we're trying to keep a spot. It's I'm trying to secure a place in the playoffs and not have to worry about doing a one-off game. Because I think being in the play-in is probably one of the most stressful things you can do, right? Just having a one-game sample size is never good. I mean, depending on how you view it, but it's very stressful. If you're an underdog, you probably want a one-game sample size, less likely for, things to go in the favor of the favorites. But this is just crazy. But I just wanted to highlight a couple teams. So again, we talked about Houston. They're looking really, really good. But then you have the Pelicans, who are 8-2 in their last 10, and they are currently the 5th seed. And I think they're going to pass the Clippers for the 4th seed. The Clippers have been looking not so good. The vibes were bad today. James Harden left the locker room before the media even came in to talk to them. So I think the Pelicans have a really good chance being the 4th seed because they're playing really good, and Zion he's arrived. He's the Zion that we had talked about. And it's interesting because I had been saying for most of the season that I felt like the Pelicans felt like kind of 2 different teams that didn't gel well, right? You had the Zion and you had the Ingram. And then I was listening this week to the Thinking Basketball podcast, highly recommended, especially if you're more into the X's and O nerdy stuff about basketball rather than just kind of knowing what happened in basketball. And they talked about how the data out there shows that they're really good with Ingram, they're really good with Zion, but they're not necessarily really good when they're together on the court. And I just wanted to say I felt validated, that I've not been lying to you, that the numbers support the eye test. That's not always true, and that's why you have the eye test and why you have the numbers, because they don't always align, and it's good to know that, but they do align. And I think the Pelicans can be scary. They're big, they're experienced, and when Zion now, who his hops are back, he's jumping, right? If Zion has got a full head of steam, who can stop him? I don't know, who can, especially in the playoffs. Then you have the Timberwolves, who are 7-3. Who in the 3rd seed. You have the Thunder, who, like I said, lost pretty badly today against the Bucks. They are the 2nd seed. And then you have the Nuggets as the 1 seed. And I think the Nuggets will stay there. I think the Nuggets of all teams know how to turn it on when they need to. And the Nuggets of all teams benefit the most from home court advantage. We see this across all sports when you have a very high altitude cities such as Denver or, any other major. You also see this a little bit in Salt Lake City, which I think is the 2nd highest elevation basketball city, that there's more of an advantage when you play at home just because you're used to the differences in oxygen. And I mean, it's significant enough if you cook in those places, the oxygen levels are different enough that you need to change your recipes. And, I don't know why I'm talking about recipes. That doesn't matter. But the whole point is the Nuggets benefit the most from home field advantage, home court advantage. And I think they're really going to try to take advantage of that. And, you know, like I've been saying, the West, I think, is the most wide open it's been. But at the same time, if I had to bet money right now, I still think it's going to be a Nuggets Celtics repeat, or not repeat, but finals, which I think for a lot of people would be the most boring outcome. And that's the thing with basketball, is I feel like the most predictable outcome is often the one that happens. And so maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. Who knows? We'll see. Let me know down below who you think is who's like an underdog dark horse team to do better than people expect. Right now, I'm on that Pelicans hype train. I think that there's a lot of talent there. And the Pelicans defense is also really good. Like, I haven't really talked about it enough, but like they're like everyone off the bench for the Pelicans can play really freaking good defense. And I think that's really helpful to have that kind of depth. So yeah, who's your dark horse team? Let me know. I want to know. I want to roast you and say you're wrong. Unless you pick, the Pelicans, and I want to say, hey, you're right. Just kidding. I'm not that kind of person. I support you, even if your choices are wrong. All right, as we wrap up this episode, I hope that you are having a great week. Really start paying attention. Basketball I think it ends April 14th or something like that. So we really have just slightly more than 2 weeks. So really pay attention. About 10 games left for a lot of teams. And this is really this is it. Everyone kind of complains about basketball that the regular season is kind of a marathon. Well, we're in that last mile or so of that marathon when it gets really exciting and you can see who gets separated from the pack. So thank you all. As always, please join our Discord down below. Feel free to follow us or like us, subscribe, whatever lingo is appropriate for wherever you're listening or watching to this. If you're able to leave us a review, it helps us with the algorithm. If you're able to listen the whole way through, give a like, all that stuff is good for the algorithm. Oh Lord, algorithm, please push this pod to everyone out there. And if you enjoy it, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog. I really don't care who's listening. The listen counts the same to me. So rough, scruffy. Yeah, that's right. That's what LeBron James said about you. What did he say? I don't know. Unless you subscribe. All right. Have a great week and have a great day.